Hey everybody, it's Matt from Eastwood. We're here in another live tech session in the Eastwood garage. For any of you guys that haven't watched one of these before, we want it to be as interactive as possible. So we want you guys to log on, join the chat. As usual, we have Randy over here, you see, that does a lot of these videos as well. He's manning our chat. He's going to answer any of your questions you may have live, and he's also going to throw some over to me. Share this for your friends so as many people can watch this as possible, and we can hopefully all learn something. So today's topic we're covering is doing some tips and tricks for metal buffing or buffing in general. Today we have our daily deal is our big boy, our 1-horse dual-speed buff motor. This guy is one of the stronger motors that we offer, and it has a 2-speed setup here, which I'll go into a little bit later. But this thing's great. You can do everything from buffing small stainless trim all the way to doing, big car rims you can buff with it. So it's a pretty awesome buffer, and that's the one I'm going to be using today. So the tips and tricks portion of this, I'm just going to throw you guys a few things that I've learned over the years with buffing that have been really helpful for me, and some things just even safety-wise, if you haven't buffed before, that's good to keep in the back of your head, keep you safe and not damage any of your parts. So first thing is the safety side of things. So I'm wearing a set of leather gloves. These are just my MIG welding gloves that I wear all the time for doing general welding. But they work well for this. They're nice, thick leather gloves, but they're not so thick that I can't feel the part or what I'm using. Because obviously this thing's moving really fast. I don't want to get my hands against the buff motor or against the buff wheel to cause an issue. Other thing is I'm wearing a jacket, of course. The key thing is you want to try and make sure that your sleeves are fairly tight. I have my gloves kind of over top of my sleeves, but you don't want real loose baggy clothing, because if it catches in that wheel somehow, it's going to be a bad time. So, and of course you saw I took it off in the beginning. I got a little clear face shield that I use. This is throwing stuff at you, so you want to put something to protect your eyes. Not a bad idea to throw some safety glasses on underneath as well if you're doing prolonged periods of buffing. So that's the whole safety part of it. Keep those things in mind. As far as the buffing goes, this kind of touches on the safety thing a little bit. You may saw in the beginning when we were buffing, you want to be using, this wheel is spinning like this. It's spinning down. There's arrows right here on the front that tell you the rotation of the machine, but it's spinning down like this. So we want to be on the bottom, what I'd say 3/4 of the wheel here, like this. You don't want to get back behind it like this. So you want to stay in the happy zone, I would say, is in here to here of this wheel. So it's you want to stay right in that area of the wheel at all times. I might move up and down a little bit or side to side, but I'm always staying right in this area. What can happen, of course, if you spin this wheel that's substantial that you can hold on to. I like to brace it like in my hip or against my stomach or in your arm. If you can, just buff it and use your body to move around. So you're going to move with your body, kind of moving the whole piece with it, rather than just having your arms where you can catch and move. If you got it really braced against your body, you can keep the part steady. If for some reason it does grab or catch, you don't want to hold on to it. If you feel it really catch, and try and catch it, because you can get caught up in that wheel. Don't want that to happen. But use this lower 3/4. I'm just giving you worst case scenarios, so you keep that in the back of your head. But you're using that low 3/4 of the wheel, and we'll do a little buffing with in a few minutes here. So the next thing is the wheels in the compound. If you guys, I'm not going to get real heavy into the different wheels and compound. If you're on YouTube, you go on our YouTube channel with Eastwood Co. as our username. We did a live stream, I don't know, 3 years ago or so, where I went real into depth of what every wheel, every compound does, and really got into that. And if you guys aren't familiar with that and you really want to learn about those compounds and what they do, watch that video. That's a great one. Today I'm just kind of giving you some quick tips and tricks with this buffer that we got on the daily deal with 10% off and free shipping. So we have our compounds here. And applying the compound is one thing I wanted to show you guys. It's something that I see beginners do wrong or make the mistake on. So a call we get from time to time is, I'm going to show you here with this other camera. This is a compound, this is a fresh one. I just put a tiny bit on. It's like it's dried up or bad. So we've had people that call in, or customers that have written emails to us saying that my compound I got, it's bad, it's dried up. I want a new compound. This is what it's supposed to look like, and solid, so that it can be, it can be packaged and moved around easily. It doesn't fall apart with when it gets warm outside. What this does is when you put heat on with the buffing wheel here, it heats it up, melts that wax, basically starts to break down, and it starts to attract it to the wheel, and it'll stick to the wheel. So that's a good thing. We want it to do that. So that's why if you ever pick this up, this stuff doesn't really go bad unless you get it really hot where it melts and turns into a glob or something, but there's nothing to really go bad in these for the most part. So this one I have here is the brown that we have, the Tripoli metal here, and we're going to use the higher speed to try and take some of the haze out of this part. So let me show you putting the compound on first. So I got my compound a little bit stuck out. So I'm not putting much pressure. I'm barely touching it to the wheel. I'm just putting a little bit on at a time. You don't need much. I like to go around the edges of the wheel a little bit because it does deflect a little bit when you're buffing. So I want to make sure I got compound on all surfaces that are going to hit. One thing to note is I wasn't pushing really hard. That's the tip that I wanted to mention that I've seen people do wrong. They think that they got to shove this compound. It's a common error that people make. Just shove this compound in and really goop it on. That's not what you need. It's better to put light compound on and reapply it frequently. So if you put a ton of compound on it, what it's going to do is it's just going to melt onto your workpiece, and then you're going to be combating that because you're just going to get it all over and it's going to be melting it and hardening up again. So you want just enough that it's actually going to do something, and then you just have to know in your head that you have to reapply it often. So I usually put my buff motor near a workbench where I can easily grab it and put it back and forth. So I put a little bit on. I'm going to work this piece here that at some point used to be polished, but over the years it's being used, it has slowly started to lose its shine. And it's got some nicks and things in it, but we're just trying to bring the shine back real quick on this. I'll do a little bit of this edge here, show you how you work the bottom edge of the wheel. So keep it on the high speed. So again, I'm going to brace it against my body. Again, I'm not pressing hard. Light pressure. I'm letting the wheel do the work here. And I'm staying away from those ridges because you want to work off the workpiece when you're buffing. I don't want to let it catch this edge right here because it's going to want to throw it. So I'm staying away from that edge there. And I'm using this bottom edge, bottom 3/4 like we said. And you can see how it deflects when I'm moving the piece. That's why you put your compound on all on the edges rather, not all sides, but the edges of the wheel. So I have it braced against my body, but I'm not pushing very hard. So we started working around this section here. Now I want to work in these edges here. So if I turned it like this, it might want to catch it and pull it out of my hands, or I'm going to be fighting it. So we're going to turn it like this and keep away from this edge here. So actually I'm going to readjust. And we're going to work these fins here. And again, I'm just using light pressure. I'm letting the wheel and the compound do the work. This isn't like sanding where the harder you press, the quicker it's going to sand, or the more it's going to take off. This is letting the compound do the work and the speed of the wheel. See, I go down at an angle like this. We're never letting it get underneath of the wheel. I'm kind of going straight like this and letting it run off the piece when we get close to that edge. So that's just a quick, kind of give you guys an idea of some things you want to watch out for. Now, as you're doing your compounds, it's a multi-step process. So you're going to go from something possibly as aggressive as what we're using today. We're just trying to bring a shine back on an old part. But if you're using something that has casting marks, you might use something like that can go on a buff motor. And it has a little rubber wheel that has some cutouts in it that basically lets it kind of give. And then you put a sanding piece of sandpaper that's on that fits around it real tight. And when you spin this wheel, it expands, just like the name of the tool sounds like. It expands because of these cutouts in it, and you can then use this to press in and get away from casting marks. So that is good if it's rouge or something like that, where you use either the Canton or you can use this loose, the loose wheel here. So again, when you're using the different compounds, a good tip to do is, when I was showing you guys, I was buffing this edge like this. When I go to my next compound, what I do is I turn the part 90 degrees. So I could turn it like this, and I could work it, same area, but I'm turning the part 90 degrees. Why you're doing that is a similar idea to when you're block sanding a car. If you've ever learned, when you block sand, you go in like an X pattern. What you're doing is it's the same idea. It's the same idea as block sanding, where you're trying to get highs and lows out and even it out. So by turning the part and doing it 90 degrees, you're working in a different direction so that you're hitting all the areas and leaving everything out. If you always buff it in the same direction, you may get some spots that have a little bit of that funhouse mirror effect on it, because you're always working the same area and you might be missing some highs that are very microscopic, but when you get it to a high polish or a high luster, you'll see those. So that's a good little tip, is remember every step, turn your part and buff it at 90 degrees in a different direction, and in the end you'll get a nice, smooth, consistent high polish on your part. So if you have to clean, another thing we see is people that are asking how long do these last, the buffing wheels. Basically, especially this one here where it's a tightly sewn wheel, I mean, you can wear this all the way down in theory, past to the sewing mark. But just because the wheel turns black, or you'll start to see a metallic look on the wheel, that doesn't mean that it's bad. That's just basically a buildup from the material coming off of your workpiece and onto this, especially if you're buffing or polishing softer metals like aluminum. It's going to get a buildup a lot quicker. So what you can do is you can take this rake that we offer, it has these little teeth on it here, like that. So you can see the little teeth. And the same idea as when you were buffing a part, you'd put it on this lower 3/4 here, let it work, and it's going to rake through the profile of the wheel, and it's going to take out any excess compound. It's going to take out any of the metallic that's in there. It's going to throw it's actually going to take a little bit off of the wheel, so you're going to get threads all over the place. You can probably see in the background here, this is not a clean part of your project. So this is going to be one of those things that's going to throw compound. It's going to throw pieces of the buffing wheel all over the place. So what I like to do is try and section off a part of your shop. If you can put plastic up or something like that you only buff in that area, or even if you're only buffing for a little bit, put some plastic up, because it's going to get everywhere, especially if you're doing a bunch of parts. Do we have any questions Yep.
Yes, actually we have a couple questions.
Sure.
One question on Facebook from Dave Michael. He'd just like to know what's the reason for 2 speeds on the buff motor?
So we had a question from Dave, correct?
Yep.
We had a question from Dave on Facebook. Thanks for watching. Why there's 2 speeds on the buff motor? And that's a great one. I kind of jumped over that a little bit. So on this particular buff motor, we offer has 2 speeds. So there's an 1800 and a 3600 RPM. What that's good for is for different materials, it's better to have a slower RPM. So some instances where you may use lower RPM is if you're doing something that is plated. The biggest thing I come across in automotive where I like to use the lower speed is if you have a part, this is a brand new chrome plated part, but if you have a part, say an old valve cover that was plated and it's kind of faded over the years, you can sometimes save the chrome plating and bring the luster back a little bit by turning your buff motor down to the lower 1800 speed, using either a Canton or one of these loose sewn wheels, and then you use the jeweler's rouge, or you can use the plastic compound that's blue. You can use that compound, which is a real gentle compound on the lower speed, and you can do the same thing I was showing on the other side, and you can work it, and you can bring back the luster in old chrome by doing that. The other times you can use it on very soft metal. So if you're doing anything like gold or silver, we get people that do buffing on old jewelry or things like that. That's where you would want, if I'm trying to bring back some old plating, I'll do that. So there's nothing wrong with doing the lower speed. If you're trying to do a lot of cutting, if you have something like this piece here that's got some tarnish to it, you're going to have to go to the higher speed and use the more aggressive compound. But that's some instances where you'd use that. That's a good question.
That's actually it
cool.
right now. But remember, tomorrow morning, our live is going to be at 9 a.m., not 3. We had it scheduled due to a conflict in our garage.
We adjusted. Randy had a great...
but we will be back at 3. We will be back at 3 on Thursday, but tomorrow morning's at 9.
Yes, so 9 o'clock, anybody of you guys that are watching this regularly, tomorrow we're going to be doing some plasma cutting. I'm going to show you guys the VersaCut 60, and if you want to see what that thing can cut, we're going to pull out some pretty thick material and just show it off. So 9 a.m., if you can tune in, definitely watch us, or you can watch it recorded afterwards. Just hit our Facebook page and it'll be on there. A couple other tips, and then I'll let you guys go. If you have a part that is getting this black residue on it, on this side here, like down in here we're seeing some black residue where we were polishing before. What that is from is what I was talking about earlier. If somebody really leaned into the wheel and put a lot of excess compound on there, that's your compound that's just getting thrown off of it and is melting onto your piece and isn't really doing any good. So if you get a buildup of that black, again some heavy black compound on there, what you can do is you can take some of our low VOC pre and spray it on a rag, and you can wipe it off. If you are getting closer to the point where the metal is getting to a pretty high polish, and I've had problems where the rags, it's hard to find a rag that isn't going to scratch. Even some of the microfibers you have trouble with sometimes. But what you can use, if you're not to the full final finished polish, and I use this on old chrome some too to bring it back, but what you can do is you can use, this is a 4-0 steel wool, so it's a super fine steel wool. So what I'll do is I'll spray it on the part like this, and then I will hit it with the steel wool. Takes our old compound off, and I'll do that occasionally just to see where we're at. So that takes that compound off. You can see it didn't put any additional scratches in it. Now I know there's nicks that are in this part. But my thinking with this is an old accessory part. We want to embrace some of the nicks. It's got some cool age to it, but we're just trying to bring some of that polish back. So we're ignoring those. We're just embracing them. We're just trying to bring the luster back. So I hit it with the low VOC pre. That kind of dissolved the compound, wiped it off with the steel wool, and we can see where we're at. We can see if we got any other spots. You can really see down there we have some compound, and that's kind of where we were starting with in there, where it was just gray. It wasn't even polished anymore. So use a low VOC. You can use steel wool, and that will take the caked on compound off really fast. It won't really put any scratches in it, and it works really good. If you're doing a final polish of your part, you can use Autosol. Is one of the metal polishes that we offer. I really like this one. It works pretty darn good.
Will you use that on stainless? That's actually, we're going into a question. We use that on stainless for a final buff?
This particular compound? I've used it. I can use this on anything, really. The Autosol is kind of a final metal wipe down you can use. If you're doing a final, the question was about stainless specifically, but if you're getting something that's a real high polish, what I've actually done is you can take compound like you use for when you're buffing the paint on a car. You can actually use something that fine to do a final polish with a small little buffer wheel on like a little angle die grinder, and you can actually use that like you would use in the jams of a car. That works well. You can use this. This does cut a little bit. This does have some cutting properties to it, so depending how polished you're going and what you're using, this may cause a little bit of marks. Now I'm talking about when you're at a high polish that's is the same as chrome. You may want to look into using the buffing compound, like I said, when you're buffing a car, final glazing that you put on, you can use that. But this is fine for stainless. It will work well. If you match this with steel wool, you can bring back the shine on parts sometimes that are not too far gone that don't require the buffer.
Any suggestions if there's some rust on chrome?
So we had a good question. We get, I don't know how often, probably a few times a week, tech probably gets this. If you have rust on chrome, any suggestions that we can give for how to get rid of that or what you can do? The answer is, well, I should back up. Chrome is a plating process, so they're putting actually a layer over top of the bare metal. When you're seeing rust on chrome, that means that the chrome has come off of the part in that spot, and the metal underneath has now rusted and is coming up through the chrome. There is nothing you can do. There's no magical product. I wish I could sell you something that did. There's no magical product that's going to make the rust just, is going to make the chrome just appear back onto the rusty area. The only thing you can do is you can try and treat that area, and you can buff the old chrome up, like I was saying, either with encapsulator and kind of dab it on that area. It'll slow it down or stop it, but you can't just make it go away and make it shiny again. All you're going to do is polish that little area, and if you try and polish that little area that's rusty, you're going to go through the chrome and get down into the copper and the other coatings that are laid down first on the metal. So there's nothing you can do to get rid of that other than stripping it and replating it altogether. But that's a good one. We get that all the time. There's no magic answer to that, unfortunately.
That is it for yeah.
Cool.
That's it
so
for right now.
We got a bunch of good questions. Hopefully a couple of these tips will help you guys with buffing. If you are thinking about stepping up to a buff motor, this is the granddaddy right here, the 1-horse, 2-speed motor that we offer. This is the one I got in my home shop. It works awesome. It's 10% off. It's free shipping today. You can find it right on Eastwood.com. We got some more videos. Make sure you search our YouTube. I got a full video going into all the different compounds in the wheels. That's probably about an hour long. Definitely watch that if you're getting into it. It'll give you a little more insight into it. So thanks, guys, for watching. Drop us some comments with any videos you'd like to see, and we'll do our best to get them done for you. Thanks. Catch you guys later.